My husband married me only because I looked like the one he loved. When his beloved returned to the country, he immediately brought her to his home and introduced me as just a maid in his house. Although I felt hurt, I didn't expose his lie because I knew our marriage was just a transaction, and it would be over in 3 months. While I was in the kitchen preparing soup, Brian suddenly announced, "From today, you'll be moving to the servants' quarters on the first floor. I'll have Melvin arrange a room for you." The spoon in my hand slipped and fell to the floor with a loud crash, shattering. I turned to look at him, my face pale, unable to believe what I had just heard. Tears welled up in my eyes, but I didn't want to cry in front of Brian. I forced myself to hold back. Brian saw the sadness on my face, and his heart clenched. Clearing his throat, he asked coldly, "Did you not understand? Do you need me to repeat it?" I forced a smile, crouching down to pick up the broken pieces, lowering my head as tears slipped down. "No need, I'll move out soon," I said calmly. Brian's fists tightened, and he stared at me, his eyes hard and unyielding. He seemed to be deliberately avoiding the difficult, indescribable emotion stirring inside him. He averted his gaze and noticed the soup on the stove. "Is the soup ready? I'll take it up to Louise when it's done," I gasped, a sharp intake of breath escaping my lips. "Ah, what's wrong?" Brian asked instinctively. "It's nothing." I quickly hid my injured finger in my palm, tossed the remaining pieces into the trash, and hurriedly escaped upstairs. From the corner of the second floor, Louise darted back into her room. Brian gritted his teeth and mechanically ladled a bowl of soup, taking it upstairs. "The soup's ready, have some breakfast and then get some rest," Brian said. Louise beamed at him, her expression soft and gentle. "Thank you, Brian. Will you feed me?" Brian nodded and spooned some porridge, feeding it to her. Yet his ears picked up the faint commotion coming from across the hall. "Brian, can we go try on wedding dresses tomorrow?" Louise asked. She looked up at him, but he seemed to not hear her, mechanically continuing to feed her. It wasn't until Louise called his name for the third time that Brian finally snapped out of his daze. "What is it?" he asked. Louise smiled, though there was a slight shadow in her eyes. "Nothing. What were you thinking about?" "Work." Brian nodded absent-mindedly. "Yeah, I just said. Can we go for our wedding photos tomorrow?" Brian didn't think much and simply nodded. Again, of course. Louise quietly continued to drink her soup, saying nothing more. I didn't have much luggage. In less than half an hour, I had packed everything. I carefully carried the heavy suitcase, protecting my stomach as I walked down the stairs. When Melvin saw me, he rushed over to help. "Miss Sherman, let me carry that for you." I gave him a sad, bitter smile. "Melvin, please don't call me that anymore. From today, I'll be living and eating with the staff. I'm just another servant in this house, so just call me Grace." Melvin let out a deep sigh but said nothing more. He picked up the suitcase and led the way to the servants' quarters. The next morning, I was still in the kitchen, preparing breakfast. Suddenly, a graceful figure walked in, warmly grabbing my arm. "Hey Grace, what's for breakfast today?" My body stiffened slightly, but I replied calmly, "Just sandwiches." "I'll help you," Louise said, rolling up her sleeves. She toasted bread in the oven and then turned to me. "Brian and I are going to try on wedding dresses today. Would you like to come?" I paused, the egg in the pan momentarily forgotten. Meanwhile, Brian, dressed in a sharp suit, was leaning against the doorframe. I had my back to him, so he couldn't see my face, but he could tell I was tense. In his mind, the scene from yesterday flashed again, him ordering me to move to the servants' quarters, and the sadness that had been all over my face. The thought made his heart jolt. He wondered how I, so used to the comfort of a soft bed, managed to sleep in a maid's room last night. Seeing me now, lost and distant, he thought, even if he brought me to the dress shop, nothing would change. What would she do if she came? There's still so much to do at home. She can stay here and clean up, Brian said suddenly. I didn't want to turn around to look at him. I just focused on my task. "Brian, Melvin can handle the chores. Grace isn't feeling well. She needs a break. Let her come with us. It'll be good for her to get out a bit, don't you think?" Louise's suggestion sounded kind and considerate, as if she genuinely cared about me. I slowly turned around, carrying a plate of sandwiches to the dining area, pretending to be uninterested in their conversation. I didn't even glance at Brian. Brian's eyes followed me, landing on the bandage wrapped around my finger. He realized it must have been from picking up the broken pieces yesterday. It was the first time I had completely ignored him. It was starting to grate on him, watching me walk in and out, not acknowledging him at all. A wave of frustration washed over him. "Fine, let's do that," he finally said. I turned to look at him, my eyes empty, devoid of any emotion. Brian felt a tightening in his chest. I had never looked at him that way before.